get this down a smidge. And there we go. Hello. This is Roger Shine with another Roger Stoppable. And I thought we should kind of talk about what's hold on, get an echo. My volume is way too loud. I thought we should talk about some of the stories that are going on in the space. Some things are being missed, and what I think could potentially be coming down the road, or what could be really be going on. So let's talk about some of the things like in the news about the SEC. So the SEC did two things. First, let's talk about this, because this actually came before some other stuff, really. The U.S. Security Exchange Commission, which helps regulate Bitcoin, they released an announcement. They had an announcement in which I'm wondering why it's not going to this person's window. All right, I think I'm going to go off video. Maybe that will help. There we go. So basically, what happened was the SEC announced its largest ever whistleblowing award. I wonder if I go like this and go there. There we go. So they announced their largest reward, okay, and for whistleblowers, which is not a terribly bad thing if you think about it. The Security Exchange Commission today announced its highest ever Dodd-Frank whistleblower award, with two whistleblowers sharing a nearly $50 million award, and third whistleblower received more than $33 million. The previous highest was $30 million award in 2014. Why this was significant and interesting is Canada, like I think last month, stated that they wanted to start rewarding whistleblowers for ICOs. The SEC then went around and started issuing letters. Some is saying the high as 300 letters, 80 letters. No one knows how many letters have gone out to various ICOs stating that they are not in compliance, that they have, in fact, violated, the SEC security laws and things of that nature. And they need to register. They need to get compliant, probably pay some fines. Those are scams are going to end up going to jail. There's already a few court cases going down the pipeline. But this announcement came out, and it kind of went wide. Yeah, it was a big number, but I think it kind of went wide to kind of put the thoughts out there, particularly in the financial market, with the stocks kind of going down and wonky. People are expecting a crash either this year or next year. With these ICOs going on, that you can be a whistleblower and you can be rewarded significant chunks of money, if you will. Which brings us to another odd story where, so you have this whistleblower announcement, right? And then you have this announcement by Kevin O'Leary in a New York hotel wants to issue a $400 million crypto coin offering to sell ownership like a stock. So they want to do an IPO, but using cryptocurrency. He's from the Shark Tank. Instead of a stock or shares, a coin. With smart contracts approved by the SEC, you'll be owner of a third of this hotel if it works. It'll be the first of its kind. He considers ICOs to be more like small stocks. But the problem with all of this is, even with this type of new format, if you will, this is what the Wall Street people are doing, is they're treating ICOs as a new format instead of what many people consider ICOs as a different means of controlling your sovereign wealth, where you don't have to have, X amount of capital to get into the game. You can invest into all sorts of different types of assets. You can either do it at the ground level, like pre-sale, through the exchanges, hold, trade, sell at different times. You don't have to hold a certain amount. Um, as an investment, really, whether it be long term, short term, for cryptocurrency to build your wealth. And if you have a company that actually has a product, which this hotel does, which Kodak, which has gotten into the business, which Telegram is doing, and a few others like Storage Coin. I'm not sure Arca did an ICO, but there's a few projects out there that have done ICOs that actually do have a product and a project, instead of just simply a white paper and some promises. You could potentially, have a return on investment or some returns, long-term returns, a stake in the company, if you will. Some of these coins are going to be utility coins where you can potentially grant you access to the product, and depending on how many coins you have or how they've, situated. I haven't really seen anything beyond like certain other tokens where they allow you to use the program like storage or Arga, that something that gives you like kind of set great access. Like if you have 1,000 coins, that means you can. I don't know if you're like if you ever been to the airport and they have those special like first class, or not even first class but special lounges. If you have like an American Express card or something like that, it might give you like access to the American Express lounge, but in this case it'll be whatever that token is for that lounge. One second here. Um, okay. So, as a result of all of this, what you ended up happening is you kind of created an atmosphere of anxiety for some people. Um, they don't know what to do, particularly with the recent reports by the SEC cracking down on these ICOs and the congressional hearings that are going on, particularly for the states. And the states pretty much set the tone for the rest of the world. Even though many countries, the rest of the world, are like, okay, ICOs are okay, or, Bitcoin is a currency. They're doing different types of regulations, but the states still set the tone. And, again, Congress released a favorable report about blockchain and cryptocurrency, but they were kind of iffy on ICOs. And while they acknowledge the technology and how it can be transformative and stuff like that, it's all about basically paying the piper, paying the taxes, paying the people. They're saying it for the protection of people, but basically paying the government, and in some ways protecting the already existing infrastructure when it comes to Wall Street in general. Maybe not so much the banks, but Wall Street itself with these ICOs. Because heaven forbid, should the common person be able to invest in anything, any company beyond just having a house, what would that do for transformatively for wealth? Think of this way: if I personally always believe that the ICOs, went too big too fast. They're getting millions and millions of dollars, and it was fascinating to watch certain projects do that. But I always thought, as a test case, you should have started something small to prove that the ICO system kind of works. Like, invest in a small restaurant, like a hot dog stand or tamale stand. There's places and regions, particularly in the States here, where you can basically go to the corner, and most of these places don't have license, and that's not an issue. And you can get like the tamale guy, your taco guy, your hot dog guy. Some of these, like, food trucks, the food truck craze. You might have seen some of the cooking shows on the various, entertainment channels. Um, you can invest in a food truck, and it might be a very nominal return where you're at the end of the year or whatever. If you hold for a year, you're getting, like, I don't know, $500 back or $100 back or $50 back. The point is, investing in these small things, investing in small businesses, if you will, helping creating and launching a viable business within your given area where you're actually directly invested into your community as an individual. Now, I know some community oriented banks already do this, but they're very limited in the wealth that they can produce and generate because they're drawing from the community. And they're also limited as well by regulations to some extent. So they're investing maybe better in some sure cases instead of maybe going out there and taking, risk, if you will, that might not actually turn out. So for a small community bank, they might put in up a much larger amount up front, like, the full 10,000 to maybe invest into something. Versus if you get a very much of a series of people spread out for that 10,000, the liability on an individual or even a group is not so great. If things fail, it was like maybe you only put $50 or $100 in, it might not be that significant of a loss really in the long term. But if you think of it in the long term, in the sense of even successes or fails, if you have like $100 in that business, $100 in that business, $100 in that business, and you're invested in your Tucson, say the Tucson, Arizona area, you're invested in 19 businesses within the Tucson community area, then you might advocate for those different restaurants, businesses. You might use them yourself. Maybe there might be a tiny little discount for use of services. You would encourage other businesses going in the area because you have an express interest to see that Mike's Coffee House succeeds. That the taco guy that you go to for lunch or every once in a while, for your kids or something like that, or like a special occasion, it makes it just tacos and stuff. The people go there more often. That's the place they go for their lunch. It's the place they go for their special events. That's the place where they go to for catering. Maybe encouraging, depending on how the structure of the ICO influence, maybe a little bit more healthier for people, or getting a little more vegan menus on there, and encouraging the vegan community to come to this place. This is a place where you can get, vegan tacos, vegan, dishes or whatever. You have an active investment, and it won't be considered too much of a significant effort on your part because you're going to already be using your already existing social network, using perhaps expanding it a little bit, maybe because of your advocacy for these different investments that you're a part of. Maybe you would be growing your social network, and then your network effect will become greater and bigger, and then you might be able to generate a snowball into going beyond the Tucson area and maybe into thinking of a larger sense of like either statewide or global sense, and increasing your investments in different areas, and have, while these small 19 businesses were just doing very minimal, maybe you're just breaking even, you're not getting too much economically out of it, you're slowly gaining something eventually through time. If you hold and save or even sell, maybe someone comes in, is a big buyer and wants maybe Starbucks or whatever, feeling the heat from Mike's Coffee, decides they want to buy that location, and you might even be able to cash out a little bit there. So these are all these different kind of crazy ideas that I was thinking of that the ICO could potentially do for people, to where they have I wouldn't say a passive income, but they have an additional revenue stream that they can benefit from in the long term. Um, People are sorry, but still having a full time job. But I'm not thinking you're going to hit it big or become a whale, like living large, like Wall Street and traders or something like that. But you can probably think of just investments overall within your community that can potentially greatly enhance it, make it more efficient, make it more palpable to live in the area for people who wanted to stay, generate all sorts of different types of businesses, particularly with the way technology has become, where you don't necessarily have to physically be in places. You can do, telecommunicate, Skype a lot of the interviews, Skype a lot of your business, do everything over, basically over the wires, if you will. And you not necessarily have to be physically in a place. Just look at e-commerce in general or what Amazon has done to e-commerce. You don't really necessarily have to physically see the bike to order to purchase a bike. You just go through the previews of the photos or the videos and do your little research and determine which bike it is that you want. Maybe for some things you might still need, a Mike's Bike Shop or something like that, where you want to physically sit down and purchase and buy something. But for most things now, it's not necessarily the case, and that has changed a lot. And this could really allow for, community growth. There's a potential for that for these ICOs. But as of now, because of greed and because of lackadaisicalness and I think a little bit of nativity on the part of those who were creating these ICOs, and a little bit of chicken shitness too. Like these guys created these ICOs, they potentially were securities, and even though they put the no U.S. buyers, U.S. buyers, U.S. buyers, they still accepted U.S. buyers really, and they chicken shit it when as soon as the SEC comes down, and now they're scrambling around or whatever. Instead of defending their project or defending their compliance or stance, or saying either they shouldn't have complied or they did comply to the fullest extent, and it's not their problem. It's not, it's not the jurisdiction of the U.S. They've done everything they could potentially possibly do because they made sure that they weren't getting U.S. buyers or something like that. Stand your ground, if you will. Stand for your beliefs in what it is you're doing, when you're producing the product and the concept. And I'm not quite seeing that in the CEO space, really. See a lot for the Bitcoin and crypto in general for the coins, but not so much for the ICO space. And we'll see. But when it comes to all this, I think everything's going to kind of shake out. I unfortunately think for the states, ICOs are going to be regulated, and we're going to go back to being where you have to have an X amount of capital in order to invest. So, some other news. Twitter follows Facebook and Google with ban on cryptocurrency advertising in 2 weeks. So this is part of just the general crackdown. Reddit is going through some bizarre YouTube crackdown about, the gun community, about how-to videos and things of that nature. A lot of it has to do with advertisement, which is what their revenue stream model is for both Reddit and YouTube. And it just really comes back to the whole concept about, what is the product? And for most of these social media outlets, you are the product, and not necessarily is in the best interest of Reddit or YouTube or Facebook to defend your privacy or your advocate your the defense of your human rights speech and human rights in general. It's all about commerce in the sense that you're the product, they're selling you, the concept of you or the number of you, if you will, to advertisers. And if advertisers are very hesitant and are not willing to piss off one large community because if there's a larger community that's not of interest in the gun thing, then they're going to do that. Our dark net market went down, which is very disappointing. It was like a how-to space about what the darknet was about, all the different, drug marketplaces, and all sorts of interesting discussions. It radically changed, I would say, around when Silk Road was kind of going down, and then there was the few, I think it's within that year, 2014, maybe a little bit into 2015, when a lot of moderators kind of left because they were concerned about their own OPSEC, but they were concerned about the nature of the community changing, the government coming after all these different markets. It wasn't very interesting. There's too many exit scams. It wasn't in the same spirit as when Ross Ulbricht was running the Silk Road marketplace, where it was very libertarian, very um, a policy of, you can sell what you can sell, except for, things that harm people like child pornography, guns, violence of that nature, and was very much about customer orientation and making sure vendors, are solid, customers are solid, people were getting paid, packages were getting delivered, things of that nature. And just the spirit and things of that nature was very different. It's very cyberpunk, if you will. And still with a little bit of a libertarian streak within it, but it has changed, and it's because of that, it wasn't quite as fun as it has been in the past, but it was still very informational. And because of that, you got the information you kind of needed or launch off of about that space. And now that it's down, I guess we're just gonna end up going back to websites. I think we're not gonna have these social media hubs for a lot of people. We're just gonna go back to blogs and individual websites to gain your information, and maybe RS feeds to be able to obtain the things that you need to know about or find out or seek out. Because these social media platforms are failing a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. All right, so next bit, which is just plain stupid. If we had in the States a competent administration, this executive order would never taken place. And basically what it was to address the situation in Venezuela. If you're unfamiliar with the situation in Venezuela, beyond it's just economy has collapsed. The state affairs internally are just chaotic. They attempted to launch the Petro Coin, which was a cryptocurrency coin created by the Venezuelan government, and they launched it, but you can't move your assets. It's very weird. In which it's pegged to petro barrels, if you will, petrol in the ground that hasn't been moved out of the ground yet. And if you invest in it, you could potentially profit for whatever the petro sells for. And they were going to use that to peg to the Venezuelan dollar, and they would accept only the petro for everything, I guess, for their business. So, switching out of the gold standard, switching out of USD and accepting Petro, and going to different countries and saying, accept this crypto coin. It's a very weird situation, very scammy situation, not very well done or well built. I'm sure it's the blockchain or the technology itself, the way it was built or the infrastructure is not well done and be subject to all sorts of different kinds of hacks and breakdowns, if you will. And really doesn't really require the response in the American government, to be perfectly honest. This all goes back to the fact that the U.S. dollar is the global reserve. If you want to buy petro, you have to buy it in USD, but that is changing with China trying to do the yuan, their dollar, the yuan, where you can buy their oil with the yuan. Russia with gold, like different countries have tried different things. Where they're essentially saying that we're accepting gold. I believe before Libya fell, they were accepting gold for oil. Try to get away from the dominance of the USD. But this wasn't really an attack on the USD. I understand that they're weirdly scared of a collapse, if you will, of the global economy or the USD economy, if you will, if other nations begin to accept different currencies or gold for oil. But Venezuela really honestly was not a contender. This could have been done back in the back rooms of diplomacy and stuff like that, to countries saying, don't accept this petrodollar scheme or scam. You're going to lose your money or whatever, da 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 da. And it would have gone nowhere. But now that there's an executive order here, now people's eyes and ears are on this subject, and people are looking at, well, maybe this Venezuela thing it's not going to work out because they don't have their shit together. But maybe what if I were able to accomplish a blockchain technology, or what is the term that these banks and governments and these oligarchs are trying to use to try to get away from Bitcoin? Digital ledger transactions, like DLT, something weird where they're not even using blockchain anymore, but they're talking about blockchain. It's stupid. Some weird acronym. But this didn't require a response by the US government. It just didn't. It really honestly did not require a response. And because of that, we got the craziness, if you will, on the part of, just in general, of the United States doing their goofiness. Just realized I was not screen sharing this whole time. Okay. So there was that, the U.S. executive order. Okay, so here. So on some good news, Binance. So Binance is one of the better cryptocurrency exchanges out there. They're looking to seek to be decentralized like Bisq. I highly recommend checking out Bisq. Is a very good decentralized cryptocurrencies. They have all the certain different currencies you can trade in. USD is also one of them. They just recently did like a liquidation thing where they devoted, a week of trying to get, buy orders and sell orders and things of that nature in USD to kind of help build that market up further. But they are offering equivalent of a 1,000 USD paid in their Binance coin as a bounty, a hacking, if you will. What this has to do was, let's read the article. So they want to decentralize. So currently, decentralized exchanges are insufficient and difficult to operate for the average user. As a result, they generally have a reduced liquidity, and cryptocurrency is evolving at a rapid rate, and we must ensure that the blockchain technology is able to keep up. This is an all-hands-on-deck initiative combining the state-of-the-art technology excellence at Binance and the best of the community to once again push the envelope of blockchain technology. So yes, even though Bisq is doing great business and stuff, and there's a few other decentralized exchanges, over-the-counter trading, there's not enough liquidity really in those places versus the centralized exchanges that exist. In addition to having internal teams working on DEX implementation, we will continue our community-driven approach and work closely with our community to build the next generation of blockchain. To help facilitate this innovation, Binance will host a coding competition with a clear intent of merging the best implementations or teams into Binance Chain. On top of this, we'll offer a total prize pool equivalent of 1 million USD paid in their coin, the BNB. How does winning $1 million prize then join the Binance team sound to you? This paper outlines the high-level requirements of what we are looking for, as well as our initial design philosophy for the Binance chain. So they're putting a bounty out to help them create a decentralized exchange. And I think this is great. I think this is going to help propel the decentralization of the community better. I think this is the year of where people are knuckling back down and getting into the tech, getting into what is important about blockchain, what is important about this community, what is important for the growth of this space. And I think the dip in the market as far as price and all the different coins and going up and down and stuff like that has allowed for the rise of these different projects and concepts. So some of the little bit of news in the show notes is I thought it was very amusing that Sony has to pay out for PlayStation 3 owners the initial big block set of Sony. What's coming online here? Oh, Openbazaar. Because back in the day when Sony PlayStation 3 was firstly launched, it had Linux on it, and so it allowed for people to play with the console box, and they were able to add things, mod things, do different things. And quite frankly, I think that's really how the mod space really grew on the console end because of PlayStation 3. But people also started making media centers. They were starting, downloading digital files and sharing them across through the Linux boxes and stuff like that through their PlayStation 3. And Sony shut that down. They did a firm update and then wiped out that access for people. And as a response to that, people sued. There was a class action lawsuit, and Sony lost, basically making it what they had done to be illegal. Because what people had personally done was they purchased the product for the sole purpose of having access to the Linux operation system. And for Sony to go in and take that from people, you're basically defeating the purpose of their purchase. And so they lost. So I think it goes up to April 14th. You can get something like, if you could prove, provide serial numbers or whatever, and prove, you can get up to, $45 from the lawsuit. So I have the link in the show notes to that. And some other great news here. Lightning Network has launched a different version of itself. Is in beta. It's the 4th version, I believe, and is growing significantly. People are very excited. It did get. I looked on Twitter yesterday, and it was experiencing DOS attacks, which is what happened to Bitcoin in the beginning. So it just an indication of the value of the network and proving whether or not it's capable of being resilient or not. But again, it's not the full version of Lightning Network. It's all beta. It's still all testing out things. So only insert the amount of coins you want to be willing to lose. And I am not going to where I want to go. Why do I have... Oh, because of the share gain. Well, while that's not coming up, I just kind of wanted to show you what the Lightning Network looks like. The world's largest SSD clocks at 100 terabytes. So here we go. Nimbus Data Extra Drive. The world has a new record holder for the largest SSD, and it's 100 terabytes. It's a new massive drive that's currently being tested with select customers and will be available for purchase this summer. That is just crazy. This is basically, even though people will probably get it, this is for like, server farms and stuff like that for like, Netflix or Amazon. But now I guess you could say with this 100 terabyte and this price point, and there's a few other large terabyte drives that have come out, and a few other server chips and things of that nature, it's possible now where I would say a mid-sized business or a small business could actually start competing on the video market, because that's the biggest cost factor when it comes to running a server is video. It just takes up so much bandwidth, so much energy. And now with this 100 terabyte SD drive, a few other terabyte drives I've seen, some of the Intel chips are coming out. They're getting priced to a point to where it's possible if you could be a video player now, compete against Amazon, against some of these other server farms, if you will, and have a foothold to this market and start, instead of having this one big behemoth like Amazon or AWS, you can now have smaller little ones and maybe start really getting to the whole decentralized and distributing of information across the world, to where just like now where people run a BitTorrent node or Bitcoin node or any type of node right now for whatever kind of software program implementation, you could potentially have somebody within their home, like in a closet somewhere or a room, having a bit of a server there. And it's a video farm. It's a really live action, full complement server that could churn out, information distributed across the world. And it strengthens the ability for people to be censorship resistant, for information to get out there, for creativity to be produced. not to have all these kind of closed wall gardens that have been developed in the last 10 years, and for the internet to be fully the full potential as a communication device where people can freely communicate and speak to one another without any friction or um, anything blocking them at all. So here we go. This is a decentralized path for Lizard. It is a means of seeing like the Lightning Network, and you can just zoom in and out of this. It's very weird. Just seeing the different types of names and the transactions and the different ways you could just hop along, I guess. It'd be interesting to see how we can connect these nodes to one another. They're like going from Lizard to here, how these could go to potentially have, different connections. Right now, a lot of them are one point endpoints and stuff, and not everyone is quite connecting quite a bit yet. But that has to do with liquidity and people not having enough satoshis for everyone's usage, if you will. I'm not sure what the minimum is to be really, like, a really effective Lightning node. That would be interesting to see what that number is. Going back. Hold on. All channels. So these are the different channels and the different, names people have done. The different amounts that they have. 20 USD, $3, very nominal amount, 60. I'm not sure you even find like one full Bitcoin in here or whatever. 80 cents, $4, $5, $26. Small different amounts to kind of help build out this marketplace, if you will. All paths. Let's see, all paths. So this is, the tool, if you will, of the day. Look at that. Wow. And whatever that minimum amount, whether it be like 50,000 Satoshis, 5,000 Satoshis, that can get people to go across the different channels and have as many different variations and connections as possible will really help this making a very resilient system. So I'm going to stop here because I have a theme that just kind of interrupted my broadcast here, and I'll come back to it, be a part 2, where we get into the whole meat of the matter about cypherpunks, about their position in the Bitcoin space, their influences, what a cypherpunk is. We're going to read the manifesto. Kind of did not delve too deep into it, but kind of talk about the resources, what a cypherpunk is, with the most cypherpunk thing that's in the Bitcoin space, I think, right now, besides just being Bitcoin in itself. The different resources if you want to find out more information about cypherpunkdom. And not really necessarily how to become a cypherpunk person, but kind of have an understanding of what people mean when they say cypherpunk. So that's it for now. Just going over the news and my thoughts about it. I think Lightning Network is here to stay. It'll be interesting to see how it transforms the space, how people interact, engage with the Lightning Network, and what that will do for commerce. So we're going to get to that next level where we're kind of back to where in the beginning where we started seeing some commerce activity, medium exchange when the price was lower. But now that the price has really significant value, what people are purchasing, what people are buying, but can we start getting the closing the loop and the unit account occurring? And I think Lightning Network could potentially get us closer to doing so. I don't think it's going to be years out like people keep saying. I think that is much closer than people think. So that's it for the talk right now. Thank you for listening, and until next time.